Welcome to Starbound, where every star tells a story. Today, aliens must confront the perils of a planet with a dangerous reputation. Earth. Let's get into the story. The sleek Celian research vessel, Stargazer, hung suspended in the inky blackness of space, a solitary sentinel gazing upon a vibrant blue and green sphere. This was Earth, a planet teeming with life, its swirling cloud formations a mesmerizing spectacle. Drala, a veteran Celian xenobiologist with piercing blue eyes and a mane of silver hair, meticulously studied the data feeds projected onto the holographic display before her. For weeks, the Celian team had been conducting a remote study of this anomaly, a world teeming with both breathtaking beauty and raw, untamed peril. Lush rainforests pulsed with vibrant life, while vast deserts stretched out under relentless suns. The oceans, a swirling tapestry of blues and greens, harbored creatures unlike anything encountered in the Celian quadrant. Magnificent, isn't it? Tani, a young and enthusiastic Celian xenolinguist, her voice filled with awe, gestured towards the holographic display. Her dark eyes sparkled with a curiosity that often bordered on recklessness. Drala grunted in acknowledgement, her stoic demeanor a stark contrast to Tani's youthful exuberance. "Indeed," she said, her voice a low rasp. "Magnificent and undeniably hazardous." Drala tapped the display, highlighting a section of the churning ocean depths. Bioluminescent predators with razor-sharp teeth patrolled the inky blackness, their forms a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface. "Look at those creatures," Tani whispered, a hint of fascination in her voice. "Imagine the evolutionary adaptations required to survive in such a hostile environment." Drala scowled. "Hostile is an understatement, Tani. This planet is a veritable death world. From the crushing pressure of the oceans to the scorching deserts and unpredictable weather patterns, it seems every element is stacked against life." She continued, her voice laced with scientific precision. "The sheer abundance of lethal flora and fauna is unlike anything we've encountered. The atmospheric composition itself is a health hazard to most Celian life forms." Tani, however, wasn't deterred. "But look closer, Drala," she countered, manipulating the display to focus on a sprawling network of lights snaking across a continent. "Those are human settlements. They've built cities, cultivated land, even ventured into the oceans. They've thrived in a world that would kill most species within hours." Drala narrowed her eyes. "Thrived is a strong word. Their ingenuity is undeniable, but their capacity for violence and disregard for their own environment are concerning factors." A deep rumble echoed through the bridge as Captain Vek, a stoic Celian with a weathered face and a military bearing, entered. "Enough gawking," he boomed, his voice leaving no room for argument. "The data is clear. This planet presents an unacceptable risk. We begin our withdrawal immediately." Tani opened her mouth to protest, but Drala silenced her with a raised hand. A silent tension filled the bridge as Drala contemplated the conflicting data, the undeniable beauty and resilience of life on Earth, contrasted with the raw, untamed dangers it presented. "Captain," Drala finally said, her voice firm, "with all due respect, I believe further observation is warranted. The potential benefits of studying such an adaptable species outweigh the immediate risks." Captain Vek glared at her, his brow furrowed. "Benefits? Drala, are you suggesting we risk Celian lives for the sake of some primitive species?" Drala met his gaze unflinchingly. "Primitive, perhaps," she conceded, "but undeniably resourceful. Their ability to survive in such a hostile environment warrants further investigation." Captain Vek remained unconvinced. As the debate raged on, the fate of the Celian mission hung in the balance. The decision was made. Captain Vek, ever cautious, reluctantly agreed to a limited ground mission to retrieve a malfunctioning research drone. Drala, determined to gather conclusive data, insisted on leading the mission. Tani, eager to prove the potential for interspecies understanding, volunteered without hesitation. Strapped into their environmental suits, sleek exoskeletons designed for hazardous environments, Drala and Tani felt a surge of anticipation. The Earth loomed large on the viewport, a swirling blue and green marble streaked with white clouds. "Remember," Drala barked over the comms, her voice distorted by the suit's filters, "limited engagement.
We retrieved the drone and returned to orbit. No unnecessary risks.
Tani nodded, her youthful eagerness tempered by a healthy dose of respect for Drala's experience. The descent pod plunged through the atmosphere, a fiery streak against the blue canvas of the sky. With a jolt and a hiss, the pod touched down amidst the dense foliage of a rainforest unlike anything they'd ever seen. Towering trees, their branches thick with vibrant orchids and creepers, formed a verdant canopy overhead, dappling the forest floor in an emerald light. The air thrummed with the cacophony of unseen insects and the squawking of exotic birds.
"Magnificent,"
Tani breathed, momentarily forgetting the gravity of their mission.
Drala, ever practical, pointed towards a dense thicket ahead. "The drone signal originates from there. Let's move."
They pushed through the undergrowth, the humid air thick and heavy, clinging to their suits like a second skin. The ground squelched underfoot, a carpet of decaying leaves and strange writhing organisms. Every rustle in the undergrowth sent shivers down Tani's spine. Suddenly, the sky opened up, unleashing a torrent of rain. The forest floor transformed into a muddy quagmire, threatening to swallow them whole. Drala cursed under her breath, struggling to maintain her footing.
"Flash flood!"
Tani shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of the downpour. "We need higher ground!" Spotting a massive tree root jutting out from the embankment, they scrambled to safety, clinging to the slick surface as the floodwater raged past, carrying away fallen branches and debris. Exhausted and soaked to the bone, they huddled beneath the meager shelter of the root, their initial excitement replaced by a sobering dose of reality. Earth, it seemed, was not about to be conquered without a fight. Drala, however, remained undeterred. "The drone signal is stronger now," she announced, her voice strained but resolute. "We're close." With a renewed determination, they pressed on, deeper into the heart of the treacherous rainforest. Little did they know, a pair of curious eyes watched their progress from the dense foliage. The jungle floor, slick with mud and rain, offered treacherous footing. Tani stumbled, nearly losing her balance as a colossal root snagged her boot. Drala, her helmet visor clouded with condensation, reached out a gloved hand, steadying her. "Careful, Tani," she rasped through the comms. "This terrain is more dangerous than anticipated." Tani grunted, brushing mud off her suit. "These weather patterns are unlike anything in the Celian database. It's like the entire planet is conspiring against us." A glint of amusement flickered in Drala's usually stoic blue eyes. "Perhaps," she conceded, "but that's precisely why this mission is so valuable. We're learning firsthand the challenges life faces on this fascinating world." As they navigated the dense undergrowth, the drone's signal grew stronger. Relief washed over Tani. Maybe, just maybe, this ordeal would be worth it. Suddenly, a guttural shriek shattered the symphony of the rainforest. Tani flinched, hand instinctively reaching for the energy pistol holstered on her hip. Drala whirled around, scanning the tree line with a practiced eye. "What was that?" Tani whispered, a tremor in her voice. "Unknown," Drala replied, her voice tense. "But whatever it is, remain vigilant." They crept forward, senses on high alert. The cacophony of the rainforest seemed to amplify the unsettling silence that followed the shriek. Just then, a flash of movement caught Tani's eye. A blur of brown and green darted through the undergrowth, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. "Did you see that?" Tani hissed, her heart pounding. Drala nodded grimly. "A large predator, most likely. Stay close." They continued their trek, their pace quickened by a newfound urgency. The drone signal was mere meters away now, emanating from a clearing ahead. Relief flooded Tani, but it was short-lived. As they emerged from the thick foliage, they stumbled upon a sight that sent a jolt of surprise through them. Nestled amidst the towering trees stood a rudimentary shelter, its walls constructed from woven branches and leaves. Smoke curled from a makeshift fire pit in the center, and beside the fire pit, crouched on her haunches, was a human. The human, a young woman with sun-kissed skin and dark hair pulled back in a messy braid, whirled around at the sound of their approach. Her eyes widened in surprise, a look of apprehension flashing across her face. She reached for a strange, multi-pronged object strapped to her hip, but then hesitated. Tani, ever the optimist, took a cautious step forward, raising a gloved hand in greeting. "Hello?" she called out, her voice tentative. The unfamiliar sounds echoed through the clearing, distorted by the suit's filters. The woman remained frozen for a moment, her gaze flitting between Tani and the imposing figure of Drala.
Then, she lowered her improvised weapon, a flicker of curiosity replacing the fear in her eyes. Drala, in her usual stoic manner, spoke into her comm unit. "Tani, deactivate your weapon protocols." Tani complied, the soft click of the safety a reassuring sound. She gestured towards herself and Drala, attempting to mimic a human greeting she'd observed in their data recordings. "We come in peace," she stammered, her voice laced with uncertainty. The woman tilted her head, her brow furrowed in confusion. It was clear she didn't understand. Tani glanced at Drala, a silent plea for help in her eyes. Drala, ever the resourceful scientist, retrieved a small device from her suit's backpack. It was a universal translator prototype designed to decipher basic communication patterns. With a sigh, she activated it and spoke into the mouthpiece. "Greetings," she said slowly, enunciating each word carefully. "We are Celian researchers. We mean you no harm." The device whirred to life, translating Drala's words into a series of clicks and whistles. The woman listened intently, a flicker of understanding dawning on her face. Then, to Tani's astonishment, she responded. "Researchers?" she echoed, her voice hesitant but clear. The translator transformed her words into a rough Celian dialect. "What brings you to my clearing?" Relief washed over Tani. Communication, however limited, was possible. Our drone," she stammered, pointing towards the dense foliage. "It malfunctioned. We came to retrieve it." The woman's gaze followed Tani's gesture. Understanding flickered in her eyes. She stood up, brushing dirt off her trousers. "Follow me," she said, her voice firm. "It seems we have something in common." With a cautious optimism, Tani exchanged a look with Drala. Maybe, just maybe, this encounter wouldn't be another hostile confrontation. Perhaps it could be the beginning of something more. They followed the woman, their sleek exoskeletons a stark contrast to her simple attire, deeper into the clearing. The rainforest, once a menacing adversary, now seemed to hold the promise of something unexpected. The woman, who introduced herself as Ailani, led them through the dense undergrowth with a practiced ease. Gone was the initial apprehension. Her movements were confident, her dark eyes filled with a quiet curiosity. "This way," she called over her shoulder, her voice a melodic counterpoint to the chirping of unseen insects. Drala, her visor still slightly clouded from the earlier downpour, followed closely behind. She couldn't help but be impressed by Ailani's knowledge of the terrain. They navigated treacherous slopes and skirted around gushing streams, all the while avoiding what appeared to be well-worn animal trails. "This forest is dangerous," Tani commented, her voice still laced with a hint of nervousness. "Even with our suits, it's easy to get lost." Ailani glanced back, a wry smile playing on her lips. "Easy for outsiders, perhaps," she replied, her voice translated by the device. "But this is my home. I know its secrets." They finally emerged into a small clearing, sunlight filtering through the dense canopy overhead. There, partially buried beneath a fallen log, lay the Celian research drone, its sleek metallic form a jarring contrast to the lush surroundings. Relief flooded Tani. They had found it. However, upon closer inspection, she realized the extent of the damage. One of the drone's wings was crumpled, its delicate sensors likely shattered. "Repairs won't be possible here," Drala stated with a sigh, kneeling beside the drone. "We'll need to transport it back to the Stargazer for a full diagnostic." Ailani crouched beside them, her brow furrowed in concern. "What happened? Did you encounter trouble?" Tani explained the unexpected downpour and the treacherous journey through the flooded forest. Ailani listened intently, nodding in understanding. "The monsoon season is unpredictable," she said finally. "These storms can come and go with little warning." Suddenly, a wave of exhaustion washed over Tani. The adrenaline rush of the past few hours was fading, leaving her with a dull ache in her limbs and a desperate craving for water. As if sensing her need, Ailani gestured towards the edge of the clearing. "Come," she said, her voice gentle. "You must be tired and hungry. I have a small shelter nearby. You're welcome to rest." Drala hesitated, her scientific curiosity battling with her ingrained caution. However, after a moment's consideration, she nodded. "Thank you," she said, her voice gruff but sincere. "We appreciate your hospitality." With a newfound sense of trust, they followed Ailani out of the clearing, leaving the damaged drone behind for the moment. The jungle, once a symbol of hostility, now held a glimmer of unexpected warmth. Perhaps, just perhaps, this encounter could lead to something more than just the retrieval of a broken machine. Ailani's shelter wasn't much by Celian standards, a simple wooden structure nestled against a towering tree, its walls woven from palm leaves and vines. Yet, to Tani and Drala, it felt like a haven. Stepping inside, they were greeted by a space surprisingly well organized. Shelves carved from tree branches held an array of tools and strange organic implements. A crackling fire pit glowed in the center, casting flickering shadows on the woven walls. Ailani gestured towards some woven mats piled near the back. "Rest yourselves," she said, her voice translated by the device. "I'll prepare some food and water." Exhaustion finally hit Tani like a tidal wave. Collapsing onto the mat, she peeled off her helmet, the cool air a welcome sensation against her perspiring skin. Drala, ever the meticulous scientist, took a moment to meticulously record their encounter with Ailani in her datapad. "Fascinating," Drala muttered, her voice barely a whisper. "Her knowledge of the forest and her ability to adapt to this environment is truly impressive." Tani nodded, her eyes already drooping. "This changes everything, Drala. Maybe Earth isn't just a death world. Maybe humans are more." Her words were cut short by the clinking of utensils and the enticing aroma of something cooking. Ailani emerged from a corner of the shelter, a wooden tray piled high with strange, colorful fruits and a steaming stew bounced precariously in her hands. "Eat," she said, her smile warm. "You must be famished." Tani couldn't resist. The stew, a concoction of unknown vegetables and what looked like small pieces of fish, smelled surprisingly delicious. Tentatively, she scooped up a spoonful with a makeshift wooden utensil Ailani had provided. The first bite surprised her. The stew was a symphony of flavors, earthy and slightly spicy, unlike anything she'd ever tasted on Celian vessels. Looking at Drala, she saw a similar look of surprise on her face as she took her first bite. "This is astonishing," Drala mumbled around a mouthful of food. "The ingenuity in these flavors, the complexity. It's truly remarkable." Ailani chuckled, a soft sound that echoed in the small shelter. "We humans have to make do with what we have," she said. "This world isn't always kind, but we've learned to adapt." As they ate, a comfortable silence descended upon them. For Tani, the fear and apprehension of the earlier encounter had dissipated, replaced by a sense of wonder. Ailani, despite being a lone inhabitant of this vast forest, did not seem isolated, but rather existed in a harmonious balance with her environment. Suddenly, Ailani's brow furrowed. She pushed her unfinished stew aside and reached for a small device strapped to her belt. It crackled to life, a stream of rapid-fire speech filling the air. Ailani listened intently, her face turning serious. When the voice ceased, she turned towards Tani and Drala, a worried look in her eyes. "There's been an outbreak," she said, her voice grave. "A new virus spreading fast. We need to get back to my research station. I might have a solution." Tani's heart hammered in her chest. A virus? On Earth? The implications were staggering. Here they were, stranded on a hostile planet, now faced with a potential pandemic. "What kind of virus?" Drala asked, her voice sharp with concern. "Is it lethal?" Ailani shook her head. "Not yet," she said, the translator slightly garbled with the urgency in her voice. "But it's spreading quickly. My research team is working on a cure, but we need more resources, more data." Drala exchanged a look with Tani. This was unexpected, a potential disaster that transcended their initial mission of retrieving the drone. Yet, a part of Drala, the scientist in her, couldn't help but be intrigued. "Perhaps we can be of assistance," Drala said, her voice firm. "The Celian database holds extensive medical knowledge. We might have some information relevant to your research." A flicker of hope sparked in Ailani's eyes. "Really? You'd be willing to help?" "Of course," Tani interjected, her voice filled with newfound determination. "We can combine our knowledge, share resources. Maybe together we can find a solution." Ailani's smile, though fleeting, held a warmth that filled the small shelter. "That would be amazing. But first you need to see my research station. It's closer than the settlement where the outbreak started, but still a few hours' walk." Drala hesitated, her brows furrowed. The damaged drone. "We can retrieve it later," Tani said, her voice pleading. "Lives might be at stake. This virus." Drala sighed, a low rumble emanating from her suit. "Very well," she conceded, ever the pragmatist. "But retrieving the drone remains a priority. We cannot return to orbit empty-handed." An agreement was made. Fueled by the urgency of the situation, they quickly packed their belongings, leaving behind remnants of their meal. With Ailani in the lead, they ventured deeper into the rainforest, a newfound purpose propelling their steps. The jungle, once intimidating, now held a sense of urgency. The cacophony of insects and birdsong seemed to echo the escalating gravity of their mission. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, a sense of camaraderie blossomed between the Celians and the lone human. They discussed their research, their cultures, and their struggles to survive in their respective environments. Ailani shared stories of human ingenuity, their efforts to adapt to a constantly changing world. Tani, in turn, described the vastness of the Celian galaxy, the countless species they encountered, and their search for knowledge. Drala, initially aloof, found herself drawn into their conversation. This human, Ailani, with her fierce spirit and thirst for knowledge, was unlike anything she had encountered before. Perhaps, just perhaps, this seemingly primitive world held more surprises than initially imagined. By the time the sun began its descent, casting long shadows through the dense foliage, they reached their destination. A clearing emerged before them, unlike any they had seen before. The clearing was a scene of controlled chaos. A network of makeshift buildings constructed from a combination of salvaged materials and futuristic technology hummed with activity. Solar panels gleamed in the fading sunlight, powering an intricate network of cables that snaked between the structures. In the center stood a larger building, its walls displaying holographic projections of molecular structures and complex mathematical equations. This, Ailani explained, was the heart of the research station. A collaborative effort between independent researchers and a small government agency dedicated to environmental and biological studies. A flurry of activity greeted them as they emerged from the dense foliage. Men and women clad in simple lab coats and protective gear rushed around, their faces etched with worry. Ailani introduced them as her colleagues, biologists, virologists, and engineers all united in the fight against the rapidly spreading virus. Drala and Tani were greeted with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The sight of the Celians, their sleek exoskeletons gleaming in the dying light, was a stark contrast to the human scientists. However, Ailani's vouching for them helped ease the initial tension. Inside the main building, the air crackled with nervous energy. Scientists huddled around holographic displays, debating the latest data on the virus. Ailani, her eyes gleaming with determination, led them to a corner where a team of researchers toiled over a complex bioscanner. "This is Dr. Sato," Ailani said, gesturing towards a wiry man with graying hair who looked up from his work with a skeptical glance. "He's leading the research on the virus." Dr. Sato, after a brief, appraising look at the Celians, adjusted his spectacles and gestured towards a holographic display. "The virus is unlike anything we've encountered before. It's mutating rapidly, making a traditional vaccine difficult to develop." Drala, her visor retracted, studied the holographic display with a furrowed brow. "These mutations, they follow a curious pattern." She tapped a few controls on a wrist communicator, projecting data from the Celian database onto the holographic display. "We have encountered similar viral structures in other species. Perhaps our knowledge could be of assistance." A hush fell over the room. The human scientists, initially skeptical, leaned closer, their eyes widening in surprise as Drala explained the complex biological information. Tani, acting as a translator, facilitated the exchange of knowledge. The Celian data, combined with the initial research conducted by the human scientists, offered a new perspective on the virus, revealing potential weaknesses in its structure. A wave of renewed hope swept through the room. Dr. Sato, his initial skepticism replaced by a newfound sense of cooperation, clapped his hands once. "This changes everything," he exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. "With your data, we might be able to develop a targeted treatment, perhaps even a cure." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the human scientists. The arrival of the Celians, unexpected and initially met with suspicion, now represented a potential turning point in their fight against the virus. The following days were a whirlwind of collaborative effort. Drala, her initial reservations forgotten, threw herself into the research alongside Dr. Sato and his team. The makeshift lab buzzed with activity as Celian technology and human ingenuity merged in a frantic race against the clock. Tani, her youthful enthusiasm a welcome counterpoint to the intense scientific discussions, served as a bridge between the two species. She translated complex scientific jargon, fostering a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. The Celian bioscanner proved invaluable. It allowed for a deeper examination of the virus, revealing its vulnerabilities at a cellular level. Drala, drawing upon her vast knowledge of Celian medicine, proposed a gene-editing technique that could potentially disarm the virus before it replicated further. The idea was met with cautious optimism. It was a risky procedure, untested on the human immune system. However, faced with the rapid spread of the virus, Dr. Sato and his team were willing to consider any option. Days turned into nights as they tirelessly tested and refined the gene-editing therapy. Drala, fueled by a newfound sense of purpose, worked alongside the human scientists, sharing her expertise and learning from their resourcefulness. Ailani, ever resourceful, procured rare plant extracts and natural compounds from the surrounding rainforest, testing their potential antiviral properties. The atmosphere in the lab, once tense with worry, gradually transformed into one of focused determination. One evening, as the exhausted scientists huddled around a holographic display showcasing the latest test results, a breakthrough arrived. The gene-editing therapy, a combination of Celian technology and human ingenuity, showed promising signs of success. Dr. Sato, his face etched with fatigue but a spark of hope in his eyes, turned towards Drala. "It appears your proposal has merit," he said, his voice hoarse but sincere. "We might just have a fighting chance." A wave of relief and elation washed over the lab. Tani, unable to contain her excitement, whooped and threw her arms around Ailani, who returned the hug with a warm smile. Drala, ever the scientist, remained composed, but a hint of pride flickered in her usually stoic eyes. They had achieved something remarkable, a testament to the power of collaboration in the face of a common threat. However, the battle was far from over. Testing the therapy on human subjects remained a risky endeavor. Volunteers were needed, people willing to be the first to receive the experimental treatment. Ailani stepped forward, her gaze resolute. "I'll do it," she declared, her voice firm. "If it means helping others." Dr. Sato and the other scientists protested, but Ailani wouldn't be swayed. She understood the risks, but also the potential rewards. Her bravery, a testament to the human spirit, served as an inspiration to everyone in the lab. The following morning, with a mixture of hope and trepidation, they administered the gene-editing therapy to Ailani. The next few days were agonizingly slow, filled with monitoring and anxious anticipation. Days bled into nights as the research team monitored Ailani's progress. The atmosphere in the lab remained tense, punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment. Drala, ever the stoic scientist, kept a meticulous record of Ailani's vital signs, her brow furrowed in concentration. Tani, unable to contain her anxiety, paced restlessly across the lab, her youthful exuberance muted by worry. Ailani, the beacon of hope and the first human recipient of the experimental therapy, lay motionless on a makeshift medical bed. Finally, after a seemingly endless wait, a change occurred. A faint flicker of color returned to Ailani's cheeks, and her breathing steadied. A collective gasp filled the room as Dr. Sato, his usually calm demeanor shaken with emotion, analyzed the latest blood test results. "The viral load is decreasing," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's actually decreasing." A wave of relief, long overdue, swept through the lab. Drala, a rare hint of a smile gracing her lips, punched a triumphant fist into the air. Tani, tears welling up in her eyes, rushed to Ailani's side, her touch light on the human's hand. Ailani, slowly regaining consciousness, blinked her eyes open. A weak smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "It worked," she rasped, her voice weak but filled with a newfound strength. News of the successful treatment spread like wildfire through the research station and beyond. The initial fear and despair gradually gave way to a cautious optimism. With Ailani's recovery as proof of concept, the scientists began preparing mass production of the gene-editing therapy. Drala and Tani, their initial mission long forgotten, found themselves deeply invested in the fight against the virus. They worked tirelessly alongside the human scientists, sharing their knowledge and technology to ensure the successful distribution of the treatment. Weeks turned into months, and slowly but surely the tide began to turn. The number of new infections dropped dramatically, and the affected communities started showing signs of recovery. The research station, once a beacon of hope in the face of despair, transformed into a symbol of human and Celian collaboration. The day Dr. Sato declared the virus officially under control was a day of celebration. Scientists, Celian and human alike, cheered and embraced, a sense of camaraderie forged in the crucible of a shared threat. As the time for Drala and Tani's departure approached, a bittersweet feeling hung in the air. They had come to Earth as observers, but they were leaving as collaborators, with a newfound respect for the tenacity and ingenuity of the human spirit. Ailani, now fully recovered, stood beside them, her dark eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice sincere. "You saved lives, not just mine." Drala, her emotions uncharacteristically stirred, nodded curtly. "We simply provided the tools," she replied. "It was human courage and resilience that won the battle." Tani, her voice thick with emotion, leaned in and hugged Ailani goodbye. "We'll be back," she whispered. "There's so much more to learn from each other." As the sleek Celian vessel lifted off from the clearing, Earth, a vibrant blue and green marble streaked with white clouds, shrunk in the distance. Drala and Tani stood at the viewport, a shared sense of accomplishment and a promise of future collaboration heavy in the air. Their mission to Earth, unexpected and fraught with danger, had yielded a far greater reward than mere data. It had fostered a bridge between two vastly different species, proving that even in the face of adversity, cooperation and understanding could pave the way for a brighter future.